we started making names right away. And I loved it. I was robbing drug dealers and taking their gold right off their neck. And the shit we did, who's going to call the police on you? A drug dealer?
I can identify with anything that was normal, to be honest with you. But I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Yeah.
99% of the time, you're going to disappear.
Just like the Donnie Brasco situation with Lefty.
Yeah, the reason why, they figure it this way. You brought this guy around, he ratted on everybody, now he ratted on you. You might turn around and join him and rat on us, so we get rid of you. There's no connection between there and there, and they get rid of you.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got two special guests. For the first time, Ignacio Estaban and Tim McBride. So it's the agent and the smuggler. we're gonna put them two together and see what we get here today.
All right, Bill.
Thank you guys for coming on, man. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come on the show.
Not at all. Finally, man. I know we tried this in Oklahoma and it didn't quite work out for, the internet, the connection just wasn't there. But, I'm finally glad to hook up, man. And this was, a bit of a last minute thing here to also hook up with Mr. Ignacio here, man. This is
pretty cool.
This ought to be kind of fun. We're just a few years apart when it comes to, the years in which you were working and the years in which I was working, but
right.
It's still the same thing, no matter what year you're doing it.
Yeah, it hasn't changed much. And you look at now, you look at the war on drugs. We're not winning. We're not winning. It still keeps on coming.
No, you know what? And that was something that I'd always been fond. I always got a laugh out of because, in the 80s when I was a kid and we were working, we were moving, anywhere from, 150 tons plus a week was an average week's work, for all the crews in Southwest Florida at that time. And to hear the government come on, or the evening news come on and say, that they're quoting that, Caesar's, importation Caesars are up by 30% or whatever, and they're giving these numbers, and we're all sitting back going, what's your baseline, man? Where are your numbers from? Because that's not that's not how we figure it. We figure for every 1 pound that the U.S. government seized, 500 got through.
For sure. It's so porous, especially at that time.
It was
Florida and the border everywhere, man.
There was really not many guys like you around at that time. They weren't expecting it, quite honestly, to be done in the magnitude in which we were doing it. That even surprised them.
Yeah, and me working with customs, and I would start later. I'll start in the 90s in law enforcement, later to ATF, and we had our hands full just at the airports and seaport, which I was working. And we're still getting it in 100. Let's say marijuana. I was talking earlier about cocaine. It's not uncommon to get almost 1,000 pounds of cocaine coming from Guayaquil, Ecuador. We will seize it in the fish, right? And it'll be like a kilo next to a block of ice, and it will be like in the huge grouper tunas coming in. So,
right.
The flowers, forget it. Flowers from Colombia, always full of dope, either in the stems or what have you.
Right.
But marijuana. Some of our biggest seizures of marijuana will come through Jamaica.
Right.
We would get a lot from Jamaica. That's the ganja, right? We see a lot of ganja coming in.
That was the stuff that was really worth going for, in my day when I was a kid growing up in the industry and running crews. That was always a worthwhile trip because you made a little bit more money, with the ganja. And
you would take the boat down there?
Oh yeah, man. We were taking it out of there at 40 and 50 tons at a time, and at that time, during the late 70s and early 80s, the entire Jamaican economy was supported by ganja export.
Yeah,
and when it came time for actually the Jamaican government to ask for support and and help, with from the United States on certain political aspects or certain things that they may have needed politically. The United States government said, you know what, you got to stop this crap with the ganja shit, before we even get in bed with you, even start to, help you fix your shit. And you may recall this, Ignacio. This is, the entire country was in on it, man.
And now you see it now more and more states are legalized for medical use and some for recreational use.
Yes.
And I think we're going to see a big push down. I don't think we'll see cocaine or heroin the way it is because how addicting and the problems it had. But a lot of people, they even said that Thomas Jefferson used to smoke, marijuana lightly in his house. So, I mean, I don't know if you heard this story. Did Jimmy Buffett also at first start also trafficking a little bit in weed and stuff like that?
I was actually when I was sentenced. I was sent to FCI in Tallahassee.
Oh, well.
And I was in with a guy who was the warden's trustee at that time. He had already been in for 6 years. He had, I think, 12 or 14 more to go. He was in on a smuggling charge. He was the one that got that funded Jimmy Buffett's efforts in the beginnings and got his band started.
Okay.
His name was Wayne, I believe it was, and he was the one that actually, and I wrote in my book, he was, always in the warden's ear, telling him that, Jimmy would love to come and play a concert for all the inmates, at the prison and whatnot, and he bugged him enough to where the warden finally relented, and I believe it was in the summer of 1991. Jimmy Buffett literally came and played for a captive audience of 1,100 convicts at Tallahassee. Man, it was very cool.
Wow. I remember seeing Johnny Black's movie. He did the same thing, didn't he? He also played in state prisons also. I don't know if you ever saw that. So that's cool. He did that. But yeah, no. Now I think you're going to see marijuana, a ganja being legalized to a point. And I think it's important because it does clog the judicial system, right? I mean, we've got really violent people who should be dealt with more and not clog the system with this minor stuff here with the small weed. So it's a lot of it has medical use. If it's personal use, obviously someone who's violent dealing with heavy weight, that's a whole different situation. So we have to between the two.
Has this always been your mode of thinking, or did this mode of thinking come on gradually as you became more?
No, it came with my 26 years of federal law. I just retired last year from ATF. I was with Customs 5 years, and I did 21 years with ATF, and I saw the drug side, the violence side, and maybe because of ATF and how we deal a lot with I did a lot of undercover work with repeat violent offenders, gang members, armed drug dealers, home invaders, guys who want to do murder for hire, and you see where you have to invest your time,
right,
and where you don't want to invest your time,
right,
and we don't want to waste our time with small time weed dealers where people are using it for a lot of medical and some recreational use. And as long as you don't get violent or stupid or go down that path, then that changes things, right?
Right, and that's not typical for someone that has a a pattern of use, like I do. I still use it, for medical reasons as well. But and you can't avoid the warm and fuzzy that comes with it. That's just an inevitable byproduct of the material itself. But there is a significant contrast between the way it used to be as opposed to the way it is now. I mean, it's it's mind blowing for me because quite literally people have to understand, particularly those that have now the ability to make that choice legally.
Yeah.
Should I try it? Should I not try it? They have that ability now to legally do that, and it's always been my driving force. Particularly when I wrote this book and wrote this story, was to not only impart to them the history of the cannabis throughout the United States and Everglades, in the 10,000 Islands area being the hub of marijuana smuggling in North America, and that how it was done generationally, and it was done by families. And people say, well, in that environment, and there's, with the guns and this and that, and I'm like, no, because I was a kid growing up myself in that industry, and not once did I ever see a gun,
Yeah, Is that how you got involved through your family, or how did you get involved in trafficking?
Through family. I had come down to, my father was 82nd Airborne out of North Carolina. I grew up pretty much in the South.
Yeah.
He got transferred to a sales job between Milwaukee and Chicago. So I went to high school 4 years in that area there.
Okay.
And from there I came right down here to the islands to go to work, stone crabbing. And quite literally, my first day working on that stone crab boat, we didn't pull traps that day. I was imparted on how it all worked. You wake up when you can barely see and you start pulling traps, and then you work your ass off.
Right.
But and they wake up just before the sun comes up, and I wake up and the sun's already up, and I lean out of the bunk and I look up, Captain Billy, because the bunks are right in the wheelhouse, and he's got this big shit-eating grin on his face. And he's like, Timmy, he goes, we're not gonna pull stone crab traps today. He says, we're gonna hang out here all day and unload a pot boat from Columbia tonight. I said, okay.
Wow.
And that was my first time as a kid, ever unloading a pot boat, just sprung on me like that. They it was kind of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek affair for them because they knew I'd be all right with it.
Right.
But it was 15 tons,
Wow.
and from that point on, I had never seen a load that small. We were working the very next day, actually. We went out to work again, and the same thing happened. We didn't pull traps. We moved 22 tons in that next night.
How much did you get paid at first? How much was your payment?
Well, for those first two loads, because we were rookie, the captain was trying to make sure that he had a crew that was willing and able to, to do the work. I got paid $5,000 for each of those 2 nights, first 2 nights.
That's not bad for you starting.
No, at that time, we're talking about 1979, 1980-ish, around in there, when $15,000, $17,000 was a really good blue collar wage at that time, and I just got 10 grand. I'm thinking, wow, this is great, but when I say rookie pay, my pay then after that point was now I was getting paid according to the size of the load.
Yeah.
And like I said, that first 15 tons, I never saw a load that small. After that, it was always 22 tons, 40 tons.
What about your payment? Did you ever see the payment that small?
No. And and another common misconception about the whole thing, and the reason why, the story can attract, anyone, regardless of what side of the fence you sit on, with regards to this genre or the subject. And people wonder, well, why were they allowing their kids to get involved in, the smuggling and, isn't it dangerous and this and that? Well, no, quite honestly, they need to understand that, at that level of operation, in the kind of money that's being made, there literally is no violence, and there does not have to be. Yeah. That's why, but for 4 generations, for 40 years and 3 generations, they were able to pass this on to, the first generations, which, then gave rise to the Daniels brothers, who raised their kids. And that's who I grew up with. And I learned how to haul pot from their fathers and uncles and older cousins, like that. So I was what was described by the government as the 3rd generation pot hauler.
3rd generation. Now, how much time did you end up doing?
I wound up after, them, shaking me to the core with 160 years to life. That's when they decided to change the mandatory minimums in 87 and not tell anybody about it, but I did ultimately wound up doing 4 years.
4 years.
Which
state time or federal time?
That was federal time.
Oh, federal.
And to be quite honest with you, the indictments that I had 4, and like I said, when they changed the federal sentencing guidelines in 1987, in September 1987, specifically because the guidelines that they were working within the magistrates, their discretion, and everything they had working for them, the sentences weren't obviously doing the job. So they changed from what they were doing prior, to mandatory minimums, which meant those that were getting 18 months and 12 months and, and whatever, and with judge's discretion the year before, all that went away. There is no more discretion discretion within the magistrate's realm of sentencing now. It's all slide rule, and you know this.
Yeah, so you get a lot of minimum mandatory time,
Oh,
especially if you're caught with
that.
ATF. If you get caught with a gun, I mean, and you're trafficking, I mean, especially let's say you have a fully automatic machine gun, you get a 30-year, min man.
Right.
You can get some serious, and the judge has to enforce that.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
what about a switch? The switch on the pistols, they give you that kind of time for that too, right?
Yeah, anybody who converts a weapon into automatic, you get just that alone, you get up to 10 years.
Right.
So, and then if you have trafficking on top of that, yeah, you can get some significant. I had some big cases like that, doing some significant time, guys getting away and doing some time. So that's what I saw, because with the custom side, I saw the guys bring in, and we weren't focusing as much. I said by the 90s, ganja, weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, wasn't a priority. I mean, if I had a chance to get a big load of cocaine or heroin, I'm targeting that. I'm not targeting, Jamaica or some other Caribbean island that might bring, okay, let's say it's 400 or 500 pounds, but we need to get the loads. Because cocaine, heroin was viewed as a bigger problem. That especially heroin. Heroin is very addicting, is ruining people's lives. We want to get that off the street, and that's one way. And I also talk about, a lot of the mules. When I was my time with customs, the guys who would end up swallowing, pellets full of heroin, cocaine coming into the United States, and we don't catch all those guys, but they better hope we do catch them, because the cartels, when you get out there, it's not easy to pass that stuff. You're one of these cheesy motels in Miami, and if you can't pass it, these guys are going to wait 3 or 4 days. They're going to put a bullet in your head. They're going to gut you, and they're going to take it.
Their shit. Yeah.
They're going to take their product. I mean, we'll be at Jackson Memorial Hospital, and we have the luxury of waiting days. And if they can't pass it with all the laxatives we give them, well, okay, then they go on operation, and of course, tax dollar pays for it, and they're lucky, because, like I said, these guys don't play, and it's a brutal, vicious game, especially drug trafficking, and especially how brutal the cartels have become now. The Mexican cartel now the collapse of the Colombian cartels, they're the big dog, right? They're the king. They're the ones there. And I was talking on him on his shows, and I've written quite a few books about these guys. Yeah, there's a good example right there with the pellets being swallowed, and you see that in the X-ray. That's dangerous, because they start leaking. We would get a lot of calls. These guys would be DOA, dead on arrival.
I have a video of 2 people in the back of a cruiser. One of them hands off some crystal meth or cocaine to the other one. They put it in their mouth. They're swallowing the capsules.
Sure.
One of them ends up dying. The other one, they saved the other one. But it's just like, it's a bad game to play. It's dangerous.
Yeah. My MIA in the 90s, it wasn't as crazy as the 80s, but it was still crazy enough. And I was part of that, like I said, that set team. We would get some of the biggest seizures in the country. What
happened in the 90s was you inherited what was already, for the lack of a better way of putting it, the air was already starting to come out of the balloon. When it came to Caribbean weed, I mean, virtually, in the early 90s, that was virtually the beginning of the end of Caribbean marijuana in the United States, because at that time, once y'all stopped the importation of the cocaine, the cowboys in Miami, and then they pointed their sights over here on us, and virtually stopped the amount of importation that was taking place with regards to marijuana. That opened the door for the Sinaloa. I mean, these guys have been around forever. There's nothing new about those guys, and that existed in those days.
Are these like some of the loads you took in, like this big?
No, that's dude. That would only fill half a boat.
But did you have like a big boat? Like,
no, like a 51 foot fishing vessel that's mostly deck, because they're designed to haul traps, and they're perfectly designed to haul bales like that.
They stack them, right?
Where'd you go? You go to Mexico to get the weed?
No, in the beginning, we would just go offshore to offload the motherships. We were 30 to 40 miles out. The motherships would be doing that. That's how I started. My career in the industry started, as a kid, just turned 21, going offshore and unloading from these freighters.
Okay.
And bringing in, there were 3 of us on the boat, the captain and the first mate and the second mate. And depending on how much we were sent out there to get, there would be 1, 2, or 3 of our type of vessel. So it wouldn't be just us, so I'm talking about bringing in, 30 tons or 40 tons of shit. You're not getting that on just one of those boats,
Yeah.
So there's usually 2 or 3 of those boats that'll go out there, and we'll 9 times out of 10, we're jumping up on those freighters as kids and helping the crew bring up the load and get it on the weather deck before they start throwing it overboard so we can get it stacked on our boat.
And you won't worry about either customs or Coast Guards catching you guys?
No. We would sit, prior. We would always begin to load our boats and offload the mothership about 3 to 4 hours prior to the sun going down. So we'd have, plenty of light to work with. We would sit off the horizon on the water, which is typically about 10, 11 miles, depending on the size of the boat that you're approaching. Give them a particular call sign to let them know that we're coming. So the vessel that, they'll let them know that the one that's coming that is the one that should be. And we just start loading our shit, take as much as we can, and because we've only got between sundown and sun up to get this shit into shore.
Yeah.
Get all those little boats to get it off of us. And we're talking about, 25 tons, 30 tons of
Wow.
shit.
Yeah, that's a lot of weed.
And 25 or 30 of these little smaller boats that go through the shallows, the T-crafts and the well boats and as such that were used in those days. And the Morgans, made by 2 brothers here in Naples, Morgan brothers, built boats for us as well. And literally take this entire load, and that which was not put in vans and trucks and cars by owners and driven into town and parked in their driveways, to wait till the next day, because during the daylight the next day is when the shit gets sent to Miami. We would literally take and load 2 or 3 of my buddies' houses that we've taken all the furniture out of, stack these houses full, and then, when the sun comes up, the birds are singing, everybody's having coffee. That's when the cars and the trucks and the vans would start coming over to the house, and the shore crew would start loading them. They would have a 2-meter radio, and they would know where to go out 29 and out 41. There's only one way to get to Miami. And this is what freaks us out.
Yeah.
There's only one way to get to Miami from here.
Alligator Alley, right? Alligator Alley.
Well, no. That's if you're going to Palm Beach. We're going to Miami, so you got to take 41.
Well, 41, yeah, that's another one. I take 41. Yeah.
41, that's a straight shot right into Miami.
Yeah.
Actually, we'd take it into Miami. We'd be in off of Chrome Avenue toward Kendall area, between Kendall and Homestead, that area, and do what. And
you guys weren't afraid getting popped by the police?
No.
Any close calls? Was there any
getting hit by like a canine dog or something coming out and getting a sniff?
No.
Wow.
They weren't really keen on using a lot of canine at that time. Okay. And the beautiful thing about this area and the way we were doing it, and the sheer volume in which it was being done, was they didn't expect it. They had no idea. They didn't expect that every third vehicle coming off the island was stuffed full of weed.
Ricky wants to know.
And you said the mothership was coming from Mexico, or where would the mothership come from?
Mothership would come from Jamaica, would come from Venezuela, it would come from Colombia, it would come from Panama, it would come from Belize, it would come from
all over, huh? All over Central America, South America.
Our older generations had connections all around the Caribbean rim, and if whatever kind of weed that they wanted in Miami, which is, that's wherever we went. And it was, and like I was saying earlier, that even the places where we would go to purchase this, so we were what was described as service providers. The Cubans partners, the Cuban guys in Miami would pay us X amount of dollars to literally go to wherever we had a connection to the Caribbean and buy their tonnage that they wanted for them. And I would typically do that for $175 a pound. I would buy you whatever you wanted, however many, you wanted 50, you want 100 tons, I could get that for you. And quite literally only pay $10 a pound for this shit.
Right.
So this is how when the people talk about the violence aspect of it, and at that level, why there is really no violence is simply it's mathematics. If I can take, just give you some quick figures, $300,000 of some cocaine cowboys money. And I only dealt with 2 people in Miami. I never wanted to meet anybody else. It was always Lito and Leo, who I named in the book. You go through them and I'll take care of the shit. I want to work with you guys. I don't want to see anybody else. Give me $300,000 and I could literally buy 30,000 pounds of Colombian red marijuana, 15 tons for $30,000 or $300,000. And the time it takes the vessel to get loaded and make that trip from Colombia to South Florida, which is 8 to 12 days or so, depending on any unforeseen weather patterns and stuff like that. I've turned that $10 a pound shit into $500 to $750 a pound.
Yeah.
So up 300 grand I've turned in 8 days into $15 million. I think these fucking guys are shooting at me. Well,
no, they want you to get. They're like,
give me
the asset.
fucking go back, and here to do the math a little bit further. For a job that size, my pay to pay my crew and myself out of that would take about $5 million. So they made $10 million on $300,000 in 8 fucking days.
That's a lot of money for people who are, doing that kind of work for sure. It's all good until something bad happens, right?
Well, here's the thing about that. Here's the thing about when something bad happens. We always had our asses covered in a number of different ways, with that regard. Like we never set a boat anywhere in the Caribbean that didn't have one of the people that was buying it, their person on that boat with our crew. So
we
know exactly what happened.
So no one can take off with your stuff, right?
Yeah, if something happened that got busted, that guy would go with it. He went down with it. There was no doubt about that. They would count. They would have a guy that would pay. I would have a guy paid specifically to go on that boat just to count how many pieces of shit got put on that fucking boat. And then the count again in Miami when it gets to Miami, and when those 2 counts match up, everything's good. So there was a little bit of tricks that that we could do, with regards to that. And
what if they didn't match up?
Take this math that I'm talking about. You take that original $300,000 and divide that back into 9,700,000, which is the 10 million that they got back, or the money that they just made. That you get a number of 32. And what that number 32 represents is the number of chances I've got to get the next load in before they lose money. I can quite literally lose the next 31 loads of shit
and still make money.
And I'll get that last 32nd one in there. They've still made money. That's the ridiculousness of how
that's why you go back to the whole conversation about marijuana and how it's getting more legalized. I think the times of making the big money marijuana is going to disappear because it's going to end up being, I think, legalized. I think marijuana will be legalized in all forms. So that business, just like with prohibition with Al Capone, that went away. Gambling's been legalized. All those vices and businesses get legalized. You take the profit out of it. I always say, you want to hurt the cartels, you have to legalize to a point to hurt these guys, because if not, it will not stop. You have the Sinaloa, you have El Chapo, he's down the Supermax. Then you have now El Mencho with CJ&G, right? The big rival that's come up. That's really, these guys are brutal. They're violent. They're vicious, and that's coming here. And all these brutal street gangs, generation after generation, keep on growing because you said the money is there, and these guys are getting very. It's not like what you said. Now these guys are killing each other, and it is really bad and brutal. And they also go after law enforcement, and they have to be stopped. So we need solutions. That kind of math, you take the money out of it once you legalize it, right? Then
you knock the scale right out of it. You take the cartels, ability to do anything with their product. Like when they stopped us. When I had a very interesting conversation with the supervisor for Homeland Security here in Southwest Florida, over up there in their office over off of Daniels Road here in Fort Myers several years back. And that conversation, I can only impart bits and pieces of it, but what it basically boiled down to was a bit of an awakening on his part of, from information coming from me, and a huge awakening on my part from information coming from him. And it got to a point where I had told him that, when they stopped my crew, he said, what got me there was his wanting to meet a legend, he said. And I started laughing. I said, legend? He goes, yeah, come in, let's have a talk. And he says what took place, in a nutshell, was when they stopped my crew and the other 5 crews that I was working here in Southwest Florida, during that Operation Peacemaker. He said that that following 6 months to 8 months, quite literally ended Caribbean marijuana coming into this country of any significance. And what happened was the Mexican cartels didn't want the Caribbean marijuana.
No,
they want to sell their own shit.
No, that's what I was asking about. That's what I was asking about Mexico. If you're getting it from Mexico, because they're big time into marijuana also.
Yeah. So what happens? He says what took place during that paradigm shift in the history of cannabis and cocaine here in South Florida was that the Sinaloa and the existing cartels at that time wanted the cocaine because they couldn't grow the coca plant. They didn't want the marijuana because they wanted to sell their own marijuana. So that Caribbean weed now went into Africa and into North Africa and into Europe. That's where that market went. And what the cartels were left with in Mexico were the cocaine, which they wanted because they couldn't grow the coca plant. So they had to still work those deals with them. And that's how that whole shift took place. Yeah. They took the marijuana business out of a bunch of people that for generations never fired one. I asked this guy this. I said, how does it feel having taken the marijuana industry out of the hands of a bunch of people that never fired one shot at you in 40 years?
Now you got the most violent crime syndicates. That's how my book here with El Chapo Guzman.
Yeah.
He went from poverty selling oranges, and then at 15 he started his own marijuana plantation, right? And then he grew from there. But he to grow in these organizations, you have to be a vicious killer, right? You got to be able. These guys become all assassins, and that's how they get the respect. And now there's your book, and it climbs all the way up. And these guys kill and what have you. But they're also big on heroin too. Mexico has control of the heroin, the marijuana, and they control a lot of Colombia with what used to be called the FARC. They're working with them. They're distributing now. So it's the Mexican cartels have complete control of Central America and South America. And they're as strong as I ever seen them.
Right.
And they're big bad boys right there, and they're vicious and violent, and they own everybody. The corruption right now with the allegations that the president before Peña Nieto had took $100 million bribe from El Chapo. He originally wanted 250, and this is a trial, came out in indictment. According to government witness, said he was there when he took 100 million, and he said take 100 million. So that's why he was a fugitive for so long. And Lopez Obrador. Fortunately, he's a socialite. He appears to be very soft with cartel leadership. And I think their tactic is hugs for thugs type mentality that's going out there. So he doesn't want to be a Philip Calderon and go to war. But guess what? If you don't, they're still going to take over. It's pretty much the drug lords are running the regions, and the government's becoming irrelevant. And that's what's happening. And Menchel now, the guy I was talking to last show, who's now running the show for CJ&G, they say he's worth over $60 billion in assets.
It's the same game, just a different year being played.
Yeah, it won't end. Like I said, the war on drugs this ain't working.
No, it's not, and it never will. And like you touched on earlier, the only way it's going to happen is to pop that balloon, take the demand out of it.
You have to do it. You have to work just like prohibition. You have to do it. We have to learn our lessons from history. Those who don't, we tend to repeat it because this is a vicious, brutal culture. Or people need to get their treatment. They have to cure that. They either get your treatment and no one uses the stuff. Well, guess what? They're out of the business, right?
Yeah, but if
using cocaine or heroin, it's over.
If people get sober, and everybody's sober, then there's no market. There's no market to get people sober. That's a market in itself now. Even getting people sober is a market in itself. Yeah, it's a whole business. There's so much money in that.
Yeah. And it's not just America, obviously. Europe and Canada, the world. They're addicts. They're just countries of addicts, and we have to be careful because. And I write a lot of my books. I don't know if you know, Tim. I retired last year, and I just finished doing over 50 books. They're short reads, but good reads. Yeah, I've done it. That was one I did about my undercover career with ATF. That's my longest
link
book.
is in the description for his books. In the description to get his book. Both of them. Both of the books.
You can see the poster behind me here. And I'm fortunate. I've given a shout out to Stephen Gillen and the Royal Media Creative out of London. We're working. We just finished a screenplay, and we're trying to do a TV series based on my book. So we'll see how that turns out. So.
Nice. Yeah, good luck with that, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I've been playing that game for better than a dozen years, man, and chasing that elusive green light, buddy. And it
seems like you have a good one, man. You have a good one.
Yeah, and you can have the best story in the world, but still, you know, it's a tough game to play. It's a tough industry to break into.
Yeah, and like I said, that's it seems like because of streaming and everything else, I get into the weeds here. It's easier now to get these series done because everybody's streaming now, and there's so many networks now doing it. So it's a lot easier nowadays to do it.
And they're looking for content. So
they want content, yeah.
The content that I'm willing to provide is more than relevant right now in this time, and you know, in this period. And you know, and I say that and with a bit of passion behind my story, because what I'd like people to understand when they read the story is, you know, and a takeaway from it is literally how it was able to be done in a non-violent, you know, atmosphere where families and actually allowed their children to grow up and work in an industry. Now,
like that, wow.
You know, because people are probably saying to themselves, you know, what ignorant fool would allow their children to work in an industry and as violent as that? Well, this just goes to show you that, you know, there was no violence. You know, no father or mother in their right mind would expose their children to, you know, to something that would obviously hurt them, you know, or put them in a scenario where, like, I'm putting you in front of a cartel or something like that. You know,
let me ask you, how did you end up getting busted at the end?
They wound up getting one of the guys who ran a chase boat for us.
Okay.
He was messed up doing something in Colombia that he shouldn't have been doing, and he got in a Colombian prison. And then the United States government went down there and made a deal with him, got him out of that prison, and they put him right back into work with us, and we didn't know it. That's when we started getting.
You had an informant that infiltrated you guys.
They put a guy that was already part of our crew. They got him out of jail in Colombia, brought him, said, "You do this for us, we'll do this for you." And that's where they turned him, and they put him right back to work. And he was, you know, part of the crew, man. So he knew what was going on.
Did you know he was in jail in Colombia? Because like, how did he get out? Like, you didn't know?
When we're not working and I'm not working, you know, 40, 50 guys and shit, you know, between jobs, they know when the job is going to get worked. They know what night they need to work. And whatever they do between now and then, I could give a fuck. You know, do whatever, do your thing.
Yeah, but if you would have been paying attention, maybe you would have figured out that he got busted or
messing around. And dude, we're talking about a town of just under 500 people, and half the town was involved in what we were doing.
Wow.
You know, you can't keep track of everybody, man.
Yeah.
You know? And not only that, that's just one crew. There was also a crew in Goodland, in Marco Island, in Naples, and also in Pine Island as well. So altogether, there's 5 crews, and it takes an average of, you know, 40 to 50, sometimes 60 people to make one job work overnight. And we were working.
That begs a question, Tim.
Yeah, man.
In your organization, sorry to interrupt you there. Did you have anybody in law enforcement on your side also giving you guys heads up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that wasn't hard at all in those days either. You know, it's still a bit of a touchy subject for me right now to name any names, but I can tell you that, you know, one of the individuals on my crew's father was a sheriff's deputy. And there's only 2 sheriff deputies in Everglades City. There's the sheriff and 2 deputies, and his dad was one of them.
Right.
And when his father was on duty, it was like the back door was open. You know, it was like he would sit right there next to the work that was going on in his car, you know, and
that's what I saw. Did you ever? Did you ever see? Do you ever have connections in Key West?
Had connections all over the Keys.
Because obviously in the 80s, that huge indictment came, a federal indictment that took out the chief all down involved in the drug conspiracy that was going on that pretty much rocked Key West Police Department.
Yeah, there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Mm-hmm. You know, and I had become quite good friends with several former, or actually now retired customs agents here from Marco Island and Naples from the 80s. John DC being one, Ron Guthrie and Ron Curry. I don't know if you're familiar with these gentlemen, but they were all U.S. Customs down here in Southwest Florida during that time. I was working.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
Has any of your associates gotten busted while you were doing all this work for these people? Have any of the people that you were around get busted and you're like, damn, I don't know if I want to keep doing this?
who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Very rarely did anyone ever get busted, working on the way that we work. It was a pretty sophisticated, well-oiled machine
That's what it sounds like.
by
Yeah.
the time us kids got a hold of it,
Yeah.
to be able to bring in 40 tons of shit, there's a chapter I wrote in the book where a crew worked 28 nights in a row. And some of the guys that I had talked to about, in the older generations that I talked to about that period of time said it might have been more days than 28, but I left it at 28 and did just a rough calculation based upon the size of the loads that we were averaging in those days. And I came up with a number of about 1.6 million pounds in 28 days in 1 month. Went across that little island and to Miami. It was
How much would you guys make personally? Keep for yourselves?
It was pretty significant amount, I have to tell you, because we would get paid. There were two ways to do this for whoever wanted it done. $175 a pound. We would go anywhere in the Caribbean you wanted your stuff from and purchase it and buy it and bring it and put it on your doorstep in Miami for $175 a pound. For $145 a pound, if you had a ship or a boat that you wanted of your own to go to that country and pick up your load and bring it to us, and we'll unload it offshore here and bring it to you, that cost $145 a pound. So we could do it either way. Mostly they opted for us to do the whole thing.
Sure.
So we're averaging, on 40 ton load, maybe 25, $30 million, something like that. But that's divided up between all and everybody that worked the job. Obviously, the bigger the job, the more people that work. So, and there's a hierarchy and there's a rate of pay, a schedule of pay, depending on where you work. When I was first brought into the industry as a kid, going offshore unloading the freighters was the hierarchy of this whole scenario. We were getting paid the most and I didn't realize that until later on, because the captain and two people, typically, we can get 40,000 pounds on our boat, in one load. And typically it's just the one boat to get a load, per night. And, 3 people have control of that entire load for about 7 hours, so we've got our work cut out for us. For 7 hours, we're responsible for the entire thing.
Yeah, it can get ugly.
So that's when I start making $50,000, $75,000, $75,000 a night, and working 2 and 3 nights a week, as a kid.
That's good money, especially in the 70s. That's a lot of money.
Yo, man, yeah, and another common misconception about the way it works is that people think that we bring that load of weed in and we take it to Miami and we get paid. Well, it doesn't work that way. You bring the load in, you take it to Miami, and as soon as they start selling that load out of Miami, that's when we start getting paid for it. So in order to ensure that we would get paid, if they owed us, say, $15 million for having brought this load in for them, we would send this stuff to Miami, but we would also take $15 million worth of it and take it up and put it somewhere in Naples. So give them all the rest of their stuff. So when you start paying us, you give me $10 million of what you owe me.
You get some more.
$10 million of your stuff to you.
Right.
Give me all of it. I'll give you all your shit. So if you lose your stuff in Miami for whatever reason, I make one phone call and I can get our guys paid. We didn't risk our ass to do it.
There was no times that a load got captured.
Never a load that I've ever been involved with working with. And I worked for 10 years and I worked a lot. Like I said, there were times when I'm working, 2, 3, 4 nights a week.
28 days.
Well, it's motivation's there to do it, right? When you think you can get away with it.
It's other crews working as well, because you can't keep working the same 40, 50 guys and gals, because you kill them, man.
Yeah.
You know, that's why there were so many people in Southwest Florida and so many crews available and, you know, and working. It was,
You had a lot of people.
it was
And of course, you also had law enforcement on your side, some law enforcement on your side too. That gives you an edge of confidence when you have that kind of backing.
yes. And when you're talking about that aspect of it as well, there was very little of it. There was two Marine Patrol officers between Marco Island or Naples and Everglades City, two.
Yeah.
It wasn't very hard to put a guy outside his house and watch his house all night long, you know, or Highway Patrol. There was only two of those guys that ran between Miami and you know, on 41 back and forth, you know, from Naples to Miami. There were only two of those guys. There's only so many park rangers. There's only so many wildlife officers, and we could have somebody sitting outside every one of their doors watching, you know.
So this is a significant organization. You guys had a significant organization, and you knew how to, because there's a lot of money involved. So you could pay the people to do something like that.
Yeah.
That's why my time with Customs, man, even with all that, we had our plate full just at the airport, and we had the same thing because a lot of the stuff would get ripped off. You got to be on it because sometimes these crews were good enough to rip the stuff off. You know, like 850 pounds of cocaine and fish. You know, that's not going where it's supposed to go. That's going to get ripped off and out the door it goes. So you got to be on it. And the airport is also full of corruption, dirtiness too, and getting his stuff in and out. So now this is pretty fascinating, Tim. I tell you that. Definitely.
Speaking of that, you know, that's you know, my John Deasy, the U.S. Customs gentleman that I referred to earlier. He and I are just the dearest friends. We wound up meeting. He was on the front page of the Naples Daily News the day I was arrested. And I just happened to you know, here we are 33 years later. I'm sitting next to a buddy of mine at the LA Fitness where we're working out at, just cooling down after workout. And here comes this guy up the steps and he's talking to my buddy, you know, sitting next to me. And I'm trying not to pay attention, you know, and I hear U.S. Customs, and then I hear Marco Island and Naples. And then he said 1980s. And I went, hey, you know, I had to butt in, man. I said, I'm sorry. I said, but, you know, I've got a bit of history with U.S. Customs in those days, you know. And he said, and I said, I only managed to keep, you know, one newspaper throughout all of that. You know, I said, for, you know, memorabilia, for the lack of a better way of putting it. He said, you know, in retort to that, he goes, you know, I was on the front page of one of those newspapers, he says, but I can't remember which one it was. You know, and then
this one,
like, yeah, and the conversation just kind of wands like that, and I didn't give it any attention until I'm driving home. I'm thinking to myself, oh, no fucking way, man. So I get home and I open up that yellowing newspaper of mine from 1988. And there it is. There it is on the front page with me. Man. Like, wow. So we just became, you know, after that, we started chatting, you know, and he's retired, and, you know, we just became the dearest friends, you know, and he did a Viceland shoot with me for 3 days with Viceland.
Oh, did you?
And it turned out great. We had an hour video that they aired. They put a 9-minute and 49-second version of it online, and within the first 24 hours, it had 1.1 million views.
Nice. I'll take a look at it.
Today, it has over 100 million views around the world, 17 million views in Australia, and 4 million in New Zealand.
Hey man, hopefully that's good for book sales, right?
Oh yeah. It's a testament to the fact that, you know, these guys, you know, after all we went through, and them, of course, having to work according to the letter of the law and the way the language of the law was written at that time, it still is, you know, and nothing can be done about it in any significant way until that language is changed. And I know Ignacio knows that just as well as anybody, when it boils down to that. But
wash your body. Do you use a moldy lube?
Most of the guys' vision of, you know, cannabis and the way it is today, you know, when they think back about, you know, chasing me and chasing my crew, and, you know, and
crazy times.
John said to me one day, he goes, you know what? He said, John was a badass man. He was like, he was a colonel, Special Forces Ranger. He did 3 tours in Nam. He got out of Nam. He went into the academy for border protection.
Okay.
They put him on, he said they put him on a fucking horse in Arizona on the border for about 6 months.
That's rough.
And then they put him in the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean and Bahamas, in that area over there where he first started getting a taste of us.
Sure.
And he said, then I wound up in Marco Island in Naples, and he says, and that's not until then did I feel like I was on vacation. And I said, really, John, why is that? He said, because once I got there, that's when nobody was shooting at me anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, is this the guy right here?
Exactly right. No, that's my buddy Tommy Brookbank. He's an old smuggling buddy of mine. That's when we were shooting this video for Viceland. This is that segment. Yeah, go a little bit. Keep going a little bit. You'll see him.
The forward or the other way?
Yeah, keep going forward. You'll see John. John will pop. There he is, right there.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Former customs agent.
Yeah, former U.S. Customs. Just the coolest guy, man. And has the same attitude that I think everybody is adopting, and that is that what a fucking waste of time and money it was.
Yeah, especially with weed. And now those opposite routes is, especially my time with ATF, because I did a lot of cover also with international firearms traffickers and domestic firearms traffickers, especially in Florida. I worked in Tampa and Miami. The guns then go reverse because we are the biggest source of weapons pretty much in the world, right? And the Mexicans want it, especially the cartels. The Caribbean, I went to Jamaica for training. A lot of guns also illegally shipped from South Florida to Jamaica, the Caribbean, and they do a lot of ganja for guns trading with the Haitians too. So the guns, we have embargoes, right? On paper, now they should get out there, but it all gets out there, right? And these guys are switching guns, and it is just insane. And they have a huge problem of corruption. So the smuggling routes coming in are the same smuggling routes using for weapons, and we are the best in the world when it comes to it. And people love American guns, even guns we imported. And the European guns that used to be made, like the Glocks and the Sig Sauers and H&Ks, are a lot of them made here in America now. Right. So they all come here.
Only three major ways to get from south to here is the Mona, the Windward, and the Yucatan Pass.
Yeah.
And I never detract. I hopefully, and I don't give this message, I never detract away the fact that there was violence. Most definitely, there was violence in that industry. And unfortunately, that's just the way it was. All I'm trying to say by telling the story that I'm telling is how a small town in Everglades, when they were crunched by the United States government, trying to expand the borders of the Everglades National Park in which they lived and which they formed around them, when making restrictions on things that they've been catching since the 1800s. And putting limits and restrictions and, and all this kind of shit, making it difficult for people that, were down there to make a living, to make a living.
Yeah.
And along came this marijuana thing. And the interesting thing about it is between the three generations, the majority of them didn't even smoke the shit. They just did it because, okay, you want to fuck with us and try to take our livelihood away?
Yeah, money we can make.
Here we go, man. Let's go. And also, it's important for people to understand that because it was family and generational, with that regard, doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't some bad fuckers out there, man. Some guys.
Did you know Jimmy the Pirate? Did you know Jimmy the Pirate?
No.
It says great guest, the GOAT. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I thought it would be a unique experience to get these
pretty
two
cool
together,
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tim. It was good meeting you.
Yeah, they both have great books, and both their books are in the description of this video. Go check them out. He's got a book. This guy's got a book right here, and then he's got a book right here. So
this came out in its second printing about 5 months ago. I'm now in my second printing of that book, which has gone from the first edition hardcovers to a second printing paperback. Yeah. The first edition hardcovers are, I think what spurred my publisher, which was St. Martin's Press, because I didn't self-publish the book. I had literary agent. I went the whole route with this thing because I knew the story that I wanted to tell deserved more than self-publishing, and little did I know how daunting of a task it was to get it done that way. But I managed to get it done. I managed to get it done through St. Martin's Press, which was very cool. But to have it, now my hardcover is being resold right next to the new paperback edition, which is $21.99, where as much as $200 people are reselling that hardcover for.
Wow. It's a popular story, interesting story. It's complex, and a lot of people don't realize what a well-oiled machine you guys had going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. And it was, like I said, it was a product of generations of doing it and putting it together, and discipline among the ranks as far as kids being able to have that amount of money and being taught how to spend money and not having anything to show for it.
Yes, if you flaunt it, that could be a big red flag.
Yeah, no, if you started doing shit like that, you just done, man. You didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Being stupid.
And not getting caught by the IRS either, right?
Right. Yeah. What was that?
Fucking Johnny's driving a Jag, and you're like, "What the fuck? Take it back!"
Brand new house, and you're like, "Whoa, what's going?"
I was trying to remember the acronym. It's a CTR, a cash transaction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You gotta be. Cash.
We knew so many people in town in those days, and car dealerships and boat dealerships, and and people like that, whereby I could just walk in there and drive off the lot with anything I wanted to, and they knew that I could come in there over a period of the next 3-4 days and just give them, $9,500, or a day. Until whatever's paid for, that's just how it was in those days,
Crazy.
Stuff like that, but it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah, too, man. It sounds like a good read. I'll definitely got to check it out. Hopefully you can read my story too.
Yeah, absolutely, I will.
Plus, if you also like other books, like I did go the route of self-publishing because it was taking too long traditionally, but I could never have done the amount of books I did because obviously it's profit, motivated. And this wasn't the reason why I was writing, because I didn't developing a passion, but I do politics, I do fiction, nonfiction, organized crime, you name it. You'll find something you'll like with some of my writings. You get it right there on Amazon. So
as a writer myself, I can attest to the fact that, to achieve something which you've achieved, to write that many books is an achievement in and of itself, man. Very prolific. To be that prolific, it means that you're doing something right, man.
Yeah, you got motivation, and I tell people it's motivation, inspirational, and it helps you stay disciplined. If you want to accomplish some goals, how do you do it and what to do? It doesn't have to be about writing. One of my books is about how I wrote 50 books and published in 1 year. It's about a lot of things you can accomplish in life. Take some of those messages.
It's a very cool thing to do, and
yes,
particularly like in the telling of my tale, to take it right from here and put it right on the page.
That's cool.
It's kind of cool to do it, do it in that fashion.
And then people to resell it for $150.
So $200, because they know. I mean, when the last edition was sold out, and there were no more hardcover editions available, they were just Audibles in the Kindle version available. My editor, Mark Resnick, who was editor through the last half of my book, he was just finishing up American Sniper at that time, but he was also championing my book. So I had two editors that I worked with, and to be honest with you, it was quite shocking to my literary agent and to Mark, the chief editor at St. Martin's Press, that only 3 edits were ever done on the entire book.
Very well done.
Yeah, I mean, it was written to a degree where it didn't need anything done to it. And I'm just an old pothauler from Everglades, man. I haven't,
The hard thing is, especially when you're doing your autobiography or your memoir, is you want to get it right and you want to get the facts right.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, is recalling everything properly, making sure you get it right. You don't want to get it all.
Right.
No, that's why to me, it was the longest book for me to write, because I wanted to get all the details right.
I think to get beyond that, once you get beyond the details aspect of it, comes the fleshing part of it. The ability to take somebody and actually put them in the story and give them that that tactile sensation or that olfactory sensation or that visual, you know,
That's
through
good.
the written word. And that's not easy to do. And, you know, kudos to you, man, for having written,
I appreciate it, Tim. Appreciate that. It's fun. And hopefully I can write another 50. We'll see.
it's always been told to me, and it was told to me by one of my earlier mentors, is that if you wake up in the morning and all you can think about doing is writing, you're a writer.
Yeah.
And if all you can think about doing when you go to bed at night is waking up and writing, when you're a writer.
Yeah. Yeah. Always, or we always have ideas. You want to write them down. Say, oh, this is a good one. Let me not forget this one.
Oh man, exactly. You know, and I bet you've done this too as well. You know, because
Look,
I
I think I'm a writer.
I find myself even in the gym with little pieces of paper stuck in my shoe or in my
Yeah,
pencil.
everywhere.
But I will say something, and I know that if I don't write it down, that
Forget it.
bit in there, I'll never be able to articulate it again in that same fashion.
Yes.
And I won't make any other note other than write that down. And I'll have a pile of these things. I'll do them over like a period of 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll have a pile of them. And then when I sit down to the yellow legal pages that I'm doing all my writing and editing before I go to Word document with it, and I'm just going one piece of paper at a time. I know exactly where that was
The
supposed
order.
to go.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
And it's, to me, and I know to you guys, it's a very rewarding and very fun process.
Oh, it is, man. It is. It takes a while, but when you get it done right and people enjoy your work, there's nothing like that, right?
And it's one of those things too where, and it's like painting.
Yeah.
You can keep doing it. You can keep editing. You can keep it. At some point, you just have to say it's done. You know?
Yeah, because you'll sit there forever and critique it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Same thing with videos when I'm editing things. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Well, hey, good call. I know it was last second, Bill, but I think it turned out a pretty fun show. I think your audience is going to enjoy it and appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot of good views out of it.
I think
Definitely.
so.
Thank you guys. I appreciate
Thanks, Tim.
it.
It's good meeting
Go
you guys.
check
man.
out their books. Go check out both of their books. They're in the description. And make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. A lot more stuff to come. Till next time.
Find me on Instagram at Original Saltwater Cowboy. If you happen to buy or purchase a book online and you would like to have that book autographed, you can contact me at pothauler, POTHAULER, at gmail.com. And I'll be happy to tell you how you can get your book sent to me and sent back to you all signed up and ready to go. So,
Do you do the same thing, Ignacio?
Mine are all digital, so you can go to Amazon and you type in my name. You see it right there. You'll see my 50+ books, and it's you can order like that, and it works out well. But all different things, not just about law enforcement, like fiction, nonfiction, organized crime. We've had quite a few shows, Bill, and you can type my name on YouTube, and you can see all the shows we've done. If you like this conversation, you can see some of the stuff we talk about, and buy the book. I think it goes well. So you can see the book and see how I talk about things, and it gives you a better understanding about the subject matter. So many different ways to appreciate everything we have.
I'm definitely gonna look you up, man, and follow you a little bit. And
appreciate it, Tim. Me too. I think I saw you once on the one who first gave my first shot. Real quick here, shout out to Hollywood Wade from Crime Entertainment.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He brought me in one of the first shows, and then all of a sudden I got really popular. And I mean, I could talk forever, especially about organized crime. And I know Bill's had ours for stuff, and we had a great show on the DC sniper case. I was out there, the one that happened 20-year anniversary just happened now when they got popped Muhammad and Malvo. We had a great show there, and I gave my insight, what I saw, and everything else. So look up all those shows, look up my books. I've written about that. I got a coin from the director for the work we did out there, and I put that on my cover of my book there. I took a picture of that, so that's pretty cool.
Very awesome point of view, Ignacio. That's awesome. That's cool, man.
All right, guys.
Yeah, man. So check those books out, and I appreciate both of you, man.
All right, guys.
Till next time.
Chatting with Staxx.
Hit the like button, man. Chatting with Staxx.
See you, bro.